Hello fellow painters and welcome back to my painting channel, and in this video I'm going to be painting this really cool 3D printed version of a hunter. So this is a cool 3D printed version, and we're going to take this normal grey 3D print and we're going to paint it up to look as cool as this one just on the right here. And I've printed this at home from a 3D printer called Vaultz Miniatures, who does quite a lot of really cool looking Resident Evil models. So you might remember that I did a Leon Kennedy and that was from the same place. So I'll put a link in the description below if you are interested in finding this 3D print, or if you just want to paint along and paint something similar for your Resident Evil 1 board game. So I'm going to start by covering all of the model in a Vallejo military green. This is a really nice dark green colour. This is fantastic as a base coat, and this gives us a really good starting point so that we can build up shades and tones and textures. Then I'm going to use a nice dark dirty red. So this is an AK interactive colour, so this is just a really dark red, and this will just sit inside of the mouth just like so that this gives us a little bit of a sort of tongue colour and things like that. It will also break up all of that green and give us something else to spot on the miniature as well. Just going to be careful to put this in the mouth, but you don't have to be exactly perfect or anything like that, because you can always tidy all of the colours up as you go anyway. From there then, I'm going to use a very light grey. So for this I'm using a Miskatonic grey from scale 75. I mean, you can use any sort of cream colour for the bones or anything like that, but I'm just going to use this grey colour because this grey colour is going to absorb some of the wash colour quite nicely, and it's going to tie everything together quite evenly as well. And that's all I'm going to do with this, is paint all of the claws and the teeth just like so. So just going to make sure that I cover this in at least sort of 2 coats of a nice thin down paint, and this is going to allow the paint to have a nice even sort of transition and an even sort of coat and colour vibrancy on the model as well. So as you can see, just painting the teeth and all of the claws, just trying to be careful not to get this on too much of the green. Again, doesn't matter if you make mistakes because we can fix those as we go. From there then I'm going to use a Necro Grey. Again, this is a scale 75 colour, but this is just a dark blue grey. So you could use something like a German grey from Vallejo. That would work equally well. And that's all I'm doing is, again, this is a 3D printed base, just painting the sort of road, the tarmac asphalt part of the road with this really sort of dark grey colour. I mean, you could go with black if you're going to paint something like a road and then sort of dry brush the colour back up, but I'm going with a dark blue grey. Then I'm going to use a blue grey pale from Vallejo. This is a much lighter blue grey, and I'm just going to cover the base with this one as well. And as you can see, just going to go all around, trying not to get this now on any of the green and things like that. You can see that I've placed a few little bits of that grey tone on the spikes, just on the spiny bits, just on the back of the hunter as well. And this is going to be a nice, quick and easy way of getting all of these base colours and all of these base coats onto the model. Nice and straightforward, nice and simple, as you can see. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie all of those colours together as we go, and then we'll build a little bit of the character and a bit of the depth up as we paint. So just showing you all of the base colours, all of the base coats, just like so. And once we're done, then we're going to use a soft tone from the Army Painter. Soft tone is a great sort of middle of the road brown wash. This is an earthy tone wash. So I'm going to cover the whole miniature with this. These earthy tones really do work well with earthy colours. So when you're using things like dark greens, sort of grey tones and things like that, this does create a sort of dirty kind of browny kind of look as well to the model. It ties these earth colours together really well. It sits in all of the recess points really well as well, so this gives you a really good sort of base coat and a really good shade that you can build the colours back up from. It's very easy to use, you know, straight out of the pot. You can add a small amount of water to it if you like, and it's nice and simple, nice and straightforward. It sits very well on the model. I'm also going to cover all of the base using that as well. And then once we're done, we're going to go and use an Ardennes Green from the scale 75 range. The Ardennes Green is a lighter sort of shade to the military green, and that's all we're going to do is just dry brush this up on all of those areas of the model where we get in these sort of like shell looking effect. because what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush the sort of harder, more sort of shell looking colours and tones, and then we're going to paint all of the sort of fleshy tones as well, and we're going to create this really great looking two-tone green effect as well. Once that one's dry, we're then going to use field grey, and we're going to dry brush this one just up on top of what we've just done, and again just trying to make sure that there's not so much paint on the brush. We're just going to dry brush this just down all of that sort of scaly area, the scaly parts just on the back of the arms and things like that. We're just going to dry brush this just to lighten this a little bit. Doesn't matter too much if you make any mistakes at this stage, because again we're going to paint by hand all of the fleshy bits anyway, so don't worry too much about that. And also we're going to use another wash or two just to tie some colours together a little bit later. Just like so. Once that's dry, we're going to use a military shader. So this is a dark green shader. This is a dark green wash, and this is going to sit in those recess points really well. So this is going to tie those colours together on the shell. And that's all we're going to do, is just paint this just across the shell areas. So all of those bits that we want, those sort of shelly, sort of scaly bits just across the back of the arms, just like so, and down the back of the model as well. And this is going to be the benchmark. This is going to create that nice dark colour as we then build the lighter tones up later. And this is going to create that really cool two-tone looking effect that we want out of the hunter as well. It's really going to make the hunter really pop and stand out. It's really going to look incredibly cool. There we go, just like so. Trying to be careful, not overly careful, you know, you don't have to be too incredibly careful, because this is going to be a great way of tying those colours together. Now, once that's dry, we're going to use a Sherwood green and an Ardennes green. And then I'm going to mix these two paints together, and this is going to create a really nice starting highlight tone. Now, I've added a little bit of water to this, so this is a nice thin down mixture, and this will allow me to slowly pick out all of the details just across the chest area and across the arms, and as I said, all of those fleshy bits that we didn't paint earlier. So we've dry brushed all of the carapace, all of the shell, all of the sort of scaly looking areas, and then we're just going to use the very tip of a size 1 detail brush, and then we're just going to slowly pick out all of those details, just the bits around the face that we want to highlight, just like so. And the bits just around the arms, as I say, the chest area, you can see where the wash is doing a lot of work for us just by sitting in all of those little recess points and creating a nice layer of depth for us. It's a nice and simple, easy way to paint. It's nothing too fancy, but it's a really cool way of painting, and it does look good on the board as well. The miniatures will look great for it. As I said, I'm going to paint the underneath of the arms as well, and this is really going to show off that two-tone effect that I was mentioning earlier. What we're going to try to do is have this lighter fleshy tone while we use a sort of darker tone for the carapace. Once that's done, I'm going to add a little bit more of the Sherwood green into the mixture. So the first mixture was going to be 2 parts of the Ardennes green, 1 part of the Sherwood green. Then I'm going to use 2 parts of the Sherwood green to 1 part of the Ardennes green. And then this is just going to create another nice average sort of step up to that highlight. And it's going to allow this highlight then to slowly start to build in vibrancy, as you can see. And again, you can see how thin the paint is going onto the miniature, which is creating a really nice, even blend, something that is very pleasing on the eye. Thinning your paints down and learning to thin your paints down is a very important part of painting miniatures. Painting the models is great, and it's all good fun, and you can paint them however you like, but it's always good to learn how to thin your paints. Get in that right consistency that you get a nice, even, nice smooth flow onto the model, but also still keeping the vibrancy and keeping the pigmentation of the paint is very, very important. And as you can see, just slowly building this up. The cool thing is when you're using these thin down paints as well, as I say in most of my videos, you get to build this up in multiple layers. So this creates more layers of vibrancy, and it gives you complete control. Once that stage is dry, then I'm going to use the Sherwood green on its own. So this is going to be a bit more of an extreme highlight. Again, this is a very thin down paint, so this is nice and thin. And as you can see, I'm just going to slowly pick out those details. And again, like I do with most of my paintings, we're just going to use little sort of stippling effects and little sort of dabbing effects with the brush, because that's going to create an illusion of texture as well on the model. It's going to create an illusion that there is still a few little bits of scales and a few little bits where the light is catching on the sort of texture of the skin, without it being just too smooth and just smooth straight lines. It creates this really great sort of textured effect as well. And you can really see now that two-tone colour effect that I was talking about earlier, this nice light sort of underbelly, this light sort of skin tone showing through, while we've got this really sort of dark sort of scales and dark outer shell on the model as well, and it creates this really, really great contrast. Now once that is dry as well, we're going to then use a purple tone. So this is just a straightforward purple wash. This again is from the Army Painter. And once more, we're just going to use a smaller brush this time, and we're just going to control where we want this to go. And once more, using this on the scaly sort of carapace area, I'm just going to add a little bit of a purple tone to this, because again, this is going to tie some colors together, but it's also going to add a little bit of a purpley sort of texture to the greens as well. And the beauty with this is again giving off a really good contrast. So this is giving us a little bit of a different texture, a little bit of a different color tone, and a little bit more for your eyes to see. So everything isn't going to just be a flat sort of green. We're going to end up with a little bit of purple and a little bit of color and a little bit of texture going through the model. And again, that's going to break things up and create that two-tone. Now once that's done, we're going to then go and use a skeleton bone. So this is more of a creamy bone colour. Although I used the grey originally on all of those teeth and all of those bones, by adding the brown wash to it, this created a really great sort of base colour that now I'm using the bone colour to sort of build that vibrance and build that nice light vibrant sort of cream colour to all of those sort of claws, all of those teeth. And again, by adding this nice creamy light white tone, this is really going to break up those dark bits around all of the carapace, all of the sort of scales and darker bits. And as you can see, just using the very tip of the brush just to try to paint those teeth in individually, just like so. It's a little bit difficult on times just to make sure that the brush gets in there, but there we go. You can really see now that we're building up that vibrance, and again, that tone and texture looks amazing against the darker colors. Now, if you want to as well, I'm also then going to add a small amount of a dark Elendil or Eldenil violet. This is a nice dark purple. This would be something like an alien purple from the Army Painter or a Xerox purple from Citadel. And that's all I'm doing here is just adding a little bit of purple onto some of the circles, some of the boils and some of the little bits on his back, because these hunters do have a few boils and things like that. You could paint them red if you want. The reason why I didn't do it red was because I thought red might stand out just that little bit too much off the back. So because we've used the purple wash, adding a little bit of purple for these boils and these things kind of sort of ties things in quite nicely. I think it ties the colors together quite well, so that was the reason behind doing that. Then I'm going to use a Visceral Red, something like that. So then we're going to use this really nice light red tone. This is almost an orangey red, so this would be something like an Evil Sun Scarlet if you're using the Citadels. And that's all I'm going to do is just gently try to pick out the details of his tongue. It's quite difficult to show on camera, but that's all I'm doing is using the very tip of the brush just to paint inside either side of his tongue, just so that it creates that really great effect. Then I'm going to use a Rai Gray or a Rai Gray. I don't know how to say half of the names on these paints, but a Rai Gray is what I normally call it. And this is a nice sort of middle of the road sort of blue-grey. And this is where we're going to dry brush that base coat just across that tarmac, just across that asphalt area here. And that's going to bring up a little bit of a lighter tone onto that. Then I'm going to use a Lendanis Grey, which is almost like a light grey colour that you would use if you were painting things like Space Wolves. And this is going to dry brush all of those paving stones. So I'm just going to dry brush this back up from being so dark with the wash. We kind of want to keep some of the wash on there because it's brown. It's going to add to that tone that the flooring is quite dirty, it's quite muddy, it's quite mucky. You know, nothing in life is perfect, especially things like streets and paving stones. You know what it's like when you walk down the streets are covered in dirt, muck, you know, all these sorts of things. So that's why we kind of want a little bit of these shades, a little bit of this brown and things like that. I'm just adding a little bit to the extreme edges on those holes in the tarmac as well. So I'm also going to use a nice moon yellow. So this is a nice light yellow colour. And that's all we're going to do then is just using the tip of the brush. And I've just dried this off. So we're not using a nice big thick blob of paint. This is a little bit dry. So it's kind of like a half dry brush, half not. You'll see that I just wipe this across my thumb to make sure that I don't overload the brush. And then kind of just dry brushing this across so that it adds to that illusion that it's almost been painted onto the floor. We're just going to create the illusion that there's a sort of a no parking line here. And I mean, different countries, it differs. Some of them use yellow lines, some use white, so I've used a yellow one here. Then we're going to move on and use AK Interactive Streaking Grime. Now, in my previous video, I used this Streaking Grime to create a really cool looking sort of muddy, dirty sort of armor set. But this time what we're going to do, we're going to use the same process. So we're just going to use a sort of a well-used brush, as you can see. So all of the bristles and things are all open and warped and broken, and that's all I'm going to do is just use those bristles to my advantage by using a dabbing technique to just dab this around the base. And what this is going to create, this is going to really create this muddy, dirty, sort of earthy texture onto the base as well, so that it'll make the base look much dirtier, much muddier, and much nastier than it actually is. You can also add a little bit of this onto things like the claws as well, because again, that's going to make the claws look muddy, dirty, and as I say, nothing in life is perfect, so you don't want those claws to look too perfect and too bright and too light. There we go, you can see I'm just doing this across the claws here, just using a little bit to create that textured, muddied illusion just across the edges. Yeah, just like so. Nice and simple. There we go. There we go. And this is going to tie those colours together quite nicely again. And once that's done, then I'm just going to use a gory red. This is a nice sort of visceral sort of red colour. It could be used to paint a lot of things like blood and gore and things like that. So I'm just going to add a few little bits using the same technique as we've just used with the AK Interactive. And just using this broken sort of brush, just adding a few stipples of this red so that it creates the illusion that there's a little bit of blood or red just across at the base. And then again, I'm just going to add a little bit across the hands as well. Just going to try not to overload it too much. With this kind of technique, less is normally more, because it creates this great illusion of spatter and things like that. You don't want to cover the hand just in red, because that will detract from the sort of idea or illusion that there is a little bit of a bloody sort of effect across the claws, just like so. And then you can add bits here and there, put a little bit of blood on the base, on the hands, on the claws, or anything like that. You can add as much as you like, or you could use the rule of the less is more, and less is more is a good rule to use. And all in all, once it's done, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. And I love the fact that these red claws now really stand off. The green being on the opposite side of the colour wheel, this creates a great illusion of a gory, horrible monster. I also love the two-tone texture between the sort of darker outer shell and the lighter underneath. As always, my friends, you'll have to let me know in the comment section below what you think. I would love to hear from you and love to know what your opinions are on this one. Thanks very much for tuning in and watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please just press that like button. Have a good day, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you soon.